been asked to make a few videos about SCA fencing, and the first one that I'm going to make is about getting started in SCA fencing. If you're interested in historical sword fighting or sword fighting with the types of swords that the Three Musketeers would have used, or even earlier than that, those people would have used, like long swords, great swords, that sort of thing, the SCA is one of the places where you can learn to do that. There are other places like HEMA groups and other groups, and I have played with them, and that can also be a lot of fun, and they all have their positives, but I have the most experience with SCA fencing, and so that's what I'm going to talk about. Although if I was to make this video about any of the other organizations, the video would be different, and possibly different for different groups of those types around the world. The good news is that this video really pertains to SCA fencing no matter where in the world you go. I have visited every kingdom in the SCA across the world, different practices, different events, and I really do find that there are very many common denominators, and one common denominator across the SCA is how welcoming they are to newcomers. It really, really is true, especially at practices, especially within the fencing community. So the first thing you need to do is be interested and show up. What I mean by that is find a practice that is that you can attend, somehow is convenient for you. A lot of groups do a pretty good job now of advertising where and when their practices are online. If not, find an email online and write to the person. Most likely you're going to find the email of the seneschal, who's the person in charge of the local group. And you can ask them about practices, or they'll put you in touch with the marshal who runs the specific fencing practice of that area. If you can, actually email that person and talk to them and say, hey, I heard that you've got a practice next Tuesday. Is that really still going on? I'd really like to attend. That might lead to a conversation where they might be able to put together a loaner kit for you so that you may actually try it on and actually, really try fencing on your first day. But it's okay if that doesn't happen, if you don't get to talk to the person, or if they don't end up being able to put together a loaner kit for you for your first day. Honestly, some people don't do that for their first day for a couple of reasons, including a lot of people might reach out and say, hey, I'm interested. And then they go through all the trouble of putting together a loaner kit, and then the person never shows up. So they might wait for the second time. But regardless, that's the most important thing, is find a practice and show up. Notice I'm not saying find an event. Sure, find an event, go, watch, even talk to people at an SCA event. I mean, definitely talk to people at the event, but I mean, talk to the fencers about, maybe where their practices are, etc. But at an event, the people who run the practices and do a lot of teaching, that's also their fun. And so they may not have a lot of time to really talk to you a lot in depth about fencing and really get you started in fencing. Save that for a practice. Talk to them about fencing and watch fencing at an event. Go to a practice in order to start really getting into fencing. So, be it your first practice or your first practice where you might actually get to put on armor, I really do mean it. You don't have to have any kit, but I personally suggest 3 exceptions to that. One is rigid protection for an area of your body that might need it. And I don't mean your head, that's a mask, there'll be a loaner mask. But I mean, if you have testicles, if you have, say, an implant that perhaps you need to cover because you don't want that body part to be hit, or if you have a large red birthmark, the type that bleeds easily if it is hit by a sword, all of those things require rigid protection. For the crotch area, just go to a local sporting goods store and buy yourself an athletic cup. For the other parts, you're going to have to get a little creative. I have seen people use a piece of stiff leather or like a piece of fairly rigid plastic, and then duct taped that to a t-shirt that they were wearing under the armor. Make sure that whatever you are going to use is going to stand up to you moving, to you sweating, and isn't going to shatter with a blow. Those pieces are sort of unique to the person, and the athletic cup, well, If you really need one, do you really want to wear a used one? The second and third piece that I would suggest that you take with you are a bandana to cover your chin and neck, and either a bandana or a small athletic cap, like a thin one, to wear under a helmet. At least me personally, I've got some sensitive skin, and I wouldn't want to wear a loner helmet and a loner gorget that covers my neck directly on my skin, and that's why the bandana and the hat. Your mileage may vary, but not only would I kind of get squicked out a little by wearing those things right on my skin, but also I would feel guilty about sweating into something that is loner armor. And so by having those to absorb my sweat and to keep me separated from perhaps other people's previous sweat, I would be more comfortable. All right, so those are the 3 exceptions, and the number 1 most important rule is to show up. Now, as you start fencing, most people think, oh, the thing that I really should get is a sword. And no, that's actually not the first piece of equipment that I suggest that you invest in. I suggest that you invest in perhaps a helmet and a gorget. Those pieces take some time to get used to, and they are a big part of how comfortable you feel in your armor. That you've got a helmet that fits you right, that's not too big, and so you feel like it's a little bit loose, or not too small, like it's going to give you a headache. Something that fits right. They don't have to be new. You can buy used ones. Troll various secondhand sites for things that you could buy secondhand, or ask around. Maybe there's someone who is getting rid of their older mask and getting a new one. When I first started, I had a really good deal by buying a kit off of a guy whose daughter had started fencing, but then she stopped, and she was advanced enough that like her stuff fit me, so that was great. Those are the first pieces that I would suggest. The next piece is gloves. Now, you can get these in maybe different orders and get the gloves first, but those are, to me, the most important ones. Now, technically in the SCA, we no longer require gloves. I think you really should wear gloves. The skin on our fingers is extremely thin. There's like just a little thin skin and maybe a tendon protecting your bones. I mean, the tendon themselves need protection. Even just thin leather gloves are going to be 10 times as thick as your own skin and can help protect your hand. But besides the medical side, gloves are really useful because in wearing gloves, your interaction with the sword will be more consistent. If you don't wear gloves, depending on how hot it is, what type of handle you're getting on your sword, the way that the sword slips and moves in your hand will vary quite a bit. Now, there's still some variation in the way the glove interacts with the sword and the way your hand interacts with the glove, but believe it or not, it's actually more consistent overall to be wearing gloves. I highly suggest that you get your own pair of gloves fairly quickly, although they're not necessarily as important as the helmet part, but I do suggest that you get your own pair of gloves fairly quickly and always wear them when you're using swords. So why didn't I say sword first? There actually is a really good reason why in the beginning you don't want to get your own sword. And that is because you haven't yet figured out what type of sword is going to work best for you. Swords vary wildly in how heavy they are, where their weight is. Is the weight closer to the front or closer to the back? Is that how many rings they have? How do you have to hold that sword? And even with just a few months of practice, where I highly suggest that you try different swords, as many different swords as you can get your hands on to be loaned to you for a practice or 3, that you try them out, because you will naturally start to feel what feels good for you. Now, don't get me wrong. What works best for you is probably going to change over the first couple of years. But at that point, you can probably know enough to make some changes to your sword. You don't have to buy a whole new sword. Maybe you just change out the pommel, or you change out the width of the the handle or something like that. You will need your own sword so that you get really comfortable with it, but you don't need it straight away when everything's new anyways. So that's the entire thing about what you need to get started in SCA fencing. Enthusiasm, show up, and my suggestion is that important piece of safety equipment and a little bit of cleanliness equipment. But I hope to see you out there on the field because it's a lot of fun and it's something that you can do no matter what shape your body is in, which will be a subject of another video. Thanks.